Okay, so lesson 1.7, rewriting equations and formulas. So looking at example 1 and 2, it says rewriting a literal equation. So I just want to start this lesson by saying we will not be getting a single answer today. So this whole lesson is just about taking an equation and basically rearranging it. We're not actually solving for anything, we're just rearranging everything. Which you'll see as we go, but don't freak out if your answer is still a whole lot going on, because there's no way to get a final answer today because we're going to have more than one letter in each problem. So looking at example 1, it says solve the literal equation 3y plus 4x equals 9 for y. So all that means is we're going to take this equation and rearrange it to where our final answer just says y equals. Okay, so what we do, here's y, it's multiplied by 3. So here's y, here's the equal sign. So we need to get rid of this 4x and the 3. So since we're solving for y, that means this 4x is kind of by itself. It's being added over here. So what we do is we subtract it from both sides of the equal sign. See if I can write little enough, probably not. From both sides of the equal sign, which is what they've done here. Okay. When we do that, we're left with 3y equals, okay, this is a 9, this one, it's a 9 and it does not have an x. This 4 does, so there's no way you can add or subtract them. So they just left it 9 minus 4x. So this is our new equation right here. 3y equals 9 minus 4x. So again, we want our final answer to say y equals by itself. So we've got to get rid of this 3. It's being multiplied, so we're going to divide this side by 3, and we divide this whole other side by 3. So the 3's cancel over here, and we're left with y equals, which is what we want. Now, what they did from here to the final answer is, since it's everything over here divided by 3, it's almost like you could rewrite it, breaking it down. So 9 divided by 3 minus 4. That does not look like a 4, sorry y'all. 4x divided by 3. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. We have a minus, and then we could just leave this for now, 4/3 x. 4x over 3 is the same thing as 4/3 x, okay? So that's what they did to go from this to the final answer, okay? So y equals 3 minus 4/3 x. That's all we can do because we don't have a clue what x is. So we rewrote it, solving for y. That is our answer right here. Okay, so now on example 2, same thing, but now this time it says solve the literal equation y equals 3x plus 5xz for x. So now we have 3 letters, and it says solve for x. The other thing that's different about this one is we have 2 x's in it. So we can't solve for x until we only have one x in our equation. So in this one, we're going to get that x out first. So this problem's a little complicated because what we have to do, and I'll explain this again whenever I work out your problem on the board so you can kind of see me working it out as I explain it. But we're going to take that x out by doing the distributive property backwards, basically. Okay, so if I were to take that x out, factor it out, I would be left with 3 plus 5 times z. So that's what we're going to do. X and then times 3 plus 5z. Now, I'm going to show you over here as best I can. Let me switch to a different color. So, x, I'm sorry, y'all. Three plus 5z. Okay, so if I were to take this x and distribute it in, multiply it into both of these numbers, I would have x times 3, which is 3x, plus x times 5z, which is just 5zx or 5xz. It doesn't matter because they're all being multiplied. Okay, and if you notice, this is what we started with over here. 3x plus 5xz. So when we take that x out and put everything else in parentheses, we're just undoing the distributive property so we can get 1x. And again, I will show you that on the board whenever I work out your problem for you. But this becomes our new equation, y equals x times 3 plus 5z. Because we're trying to solve for x on this one, or rewrite it for x. So now since I have 1x times all of this, I can divide this side by all of that to get rid of it. 3 plus 5z on both sides. We can divide by that. When we do that, it cancels from this side and I'm left with x. Now, we have no clue what y is and we have no clue what z is. So we can't do anything else on that side, so we leave it like that. So it just becomes x equals y over 3 plus 5z. And that is your answer. All they want us to do is rewrite stuff. Okay? So now, excuse me, sorry about that. I want you to try problems 1, 3, and 5. So 1, 3, and 5. Make sure you solve for what they say for. On 1 and 3, it says solve the literal equation for y. And then on number 5, you're going to solve for x. Okay, so pause the video, attempt those problems, and then I'll work them out on the board for you. On problems 1 and 2, we are solving for y. So remember, the hardest part about these is that we're not going to get one final answer. Okay, I know that up until this point, that's what it's all about. Solve for x, get it down to one number, or solve for y, get it down to one number. So that makes it really hard because we've trained our brains. Okay, we have to solve down to one answer. We're not going to get that on these. All we're doing is we're just taking one equation and we're just rearranging it to where it equals one letter. That's all we're doing, is we're just rearranging, okay? So on 1, we have 3y minus x equals 9. And it said solve this one for y. So we're going to get it down to where it says y equals. Okay, it's not going to equal one number or one letter. It's going to equal a whole bunch of stuff. So if we look, here is y, here's the equal sign. So I have to get rid of this 3 and x. You get rid of the thing that's being added or subtracted by itself first. So I'm going to add x to the other side. So I have 3y. I've moved this. Now, this doesn't have an x. This does. We can't add them. So that is where it's just 9 plus x. All we did was move it to the other side. Okay? So now I have 3y equals 9 plus x. We have to solve for y. This says 3y. So I have to get rid of that 3. It's being multiplied. So we divide. That means I divide everything over here by 3. 3 divided by 3 cancels or equals 1. Well, we can't do anything with that. So we leave it. 9 plus x divided by 3. So we didn't solve for anything. All we did was rearrange it to solve for y. But now if we were given an x, we could plug it in and then find out exactly what y is. But all they wanted us to do was solve for y, so we rearrange it. Okay, now let's look at number 3. I almost said 2. Number 3, again, we're solving for y on this one. So it says 20 equals 8x plus 4y. So here's y, here's my equal sign, so I have to get rid of this and this. Now, we're going to get rid of this first, but don't be confused. I'm moving the 8 and the x. So I look at the whole thing. Out front, it's positive, so I subtract it to the other side. This does not have an x, this does, so you cannot add or subtract it. So we just leave it, 20 minus 8x equals, and I'm left with positive 4y over here. I got to get rid of that 4. It's being multiplied, so I divide both sides by 4. I now have it y equals, so we are done. Okay. Last one on this section, number 5. On this one, we are solving for x. This one was kind of a step further because we have 2 x's that we have to get together in order to solve for it. So if I look, everything over here, I have 2 times x plus k times x. If we notice, x is in both of them. So if we were to if we were to exactly do the distributive property backwards, that's what that is. It's called factoring it out because it's a factor when you multiply it in. So we can take that common number out. I'll show you what I mean. So if I were to take that x out,
And then in parentheses, over here I just have a 2 plus a k. The reason we can do it like that is because now I'm going to distribute that x in. If I multiply that x in, I have x times 2, which is 2x, plus x times k, which is kx, which is what we started with. So all I did was undo that, basically. I went backwards. So I'm going to take that x out, but I'm still going to show that it's times both of those, because x times 2 and x times k. And it still equals m over here. Now, we're trying to solve for x. So I want to get rid of all this. Well, all of it is being multiplied by x, so I can divide by all of it and cancel it from this side. Now we have solved for x.
Example 3 says rewrite a formula for surface area. So the formula for the surface area of a rectangular prism, so big capital S means surface area, okay? This is a given formula. Normally you'll be given this. So S equals 2LW plus 2LH plus 2WH. I know it seems like a lot, but that just means 2 times the length times the width plus 2 times the length times the height plus 2 times the width times the height, because it's a three-dimensional figure. Okay, so on this problem, it wants us to take that formula that we would be given and solve it for the length. Okay, well, if we notice in this, they went ahead and turned it blue. We have 2 lengths. So we first have to, we want to take that out, but before we can take that out, we got to get rid of the one that doesn't have it, okay? So what we do is we can go ahead and subtract this whole thing to the other side. So we're going to subtract 2WH to the other side of the equal sign. So when we do that, it cancels from this side. Let me change to a pen. It cancels from this side, and I'm left with 2LW plus 2LH equals S minus 2WH, because again, this one has letters. Well, this one does too, but they're not the same letters, so we cannot combine them. So now what I do, here's my new equation. Now I can kind of do the backwards distributive property. I can factor out my L so that I only have one. You kind of divide it out of both of them. If I were to do that, I would be left with 2W plus 2H. So I have L times all of that because we just took it out. Okay, we didn't do anything to the other side yet. Now, I want to get L by itself, and it's times all of this, so I just divide by all of that on both sides of the equal sign. When we do that, it cancels here, and I'm left with L equals, now, I have S minus 2WH on top divided by 2W plus 2H. We cannot combine any of that, so that is the formula solved for length. You're going to try number 7. So solve the formula for the indicated variable. The area of a triangle, they give you A equals 1/2 base times height. Solve for H. So you're going to pause the video, solve that problem, and then check yourself by watching me work it out for you.
Okay, number 7, it says the area of a triangle is A equals 1/2 BH. So that means 1/2 times base of the triangle times the height of a triangle. And we're going to solve it for H, for the height. The whole reason we're doing this lesson is for problems like this. Say you get on your state test, or just you're trying to look at outside the measurements of something. Triangles are really great for that. So you want to know the height of something. Well, say you already know the area, but you need to know the height. If you can rearrange it like this, it makes it a little easier to solve for the height. So we're going to solve it for the height. So I want to get H by itself, which means I have to get rid of both of these. It's all being multiplied, 1/2 times the base times the height. So we break it down one by one. First, I could divide by 1/2, but as we've talked about, you can't divide by a fraction. You flip it and multiply. So I'm going to multiply, I'm going to rewrite it down here actually. I'm going to multiply both sides times 2 over 1, which is basically just 2. When I do that, it cancels that. 2 times A is just 2A. Now I want to get rid of the base. Again, they're being multiplied, so I divide, which means I divide everything on this side by B. So the height would equal 2 times the area divided by the measure of the base.
Okay, we're going to look at example 5 and 6. Excuse me, sorry. So on example 5, it says solve the temperature formula for Fahrenheit. So the formula we're given for temperature is C equals 5 knots times F minus 32, where C stands for degrees Celsius and F is degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, we're used to seeing everything in Fahrenheit. That's what we use here in America for temperature. So then, if we rearrange this to solve for Fahrenheit, we first have to get rid of what's outside those parentheses, the 5 knots. Since it's times all of this, we can divide, but we can't divide a fraction by a fraction. So we have to flip it and multiply both sides by 9 over 5. When we do, it cancels from this side, and we have 9/5 C on this side. So we now have 9/5 C equals F minus 32. Now to solve for F, all we have to do is add 32 to both sides. So the formula, if we rewrite it solving for F, is F equals 9/5 C plus 32. Okay, so that actually leads us straight into example 6. It says, which has the greater surface temperature, Mercury or Venus? And if we look at the picture over here, Mercury is 427 degrees Celsius, Venus is 864 degrees Fahrenheit. They're not in the same unit. So to compare them, we first have to get them in the same unit of measure. So we can use the formula we just solved for, F equals 9/5 C plus 32, and change Mercury to Fahrenheit to then compare them. So since it's 9/5 times degrees Celsius, I just take this temperature that's in degrees Celsius and plug it in, 427. That's where our handy-dandy calculators come in. We can do 9/5, and for the most part, if your little fraction button doesn't work, do it in parentheses. Do 9, the little backslash, which is the divide button, divided by 5, close parentheses, and your calculator knows that that means 9/5. Then times 427 plus 32. When you plug all that in your calculator, we get 800.6, because it's temperature, so we do decimals. And if we notice, Venus is 864 degrees Fahrenheit, so Venus has a greater surface temperature than Mercury, neither of which we could survive on because of how hot they are. Okay, I want you to do problem 9. And then, so pause the video, work that one out, and then I'll go over it with you, and then we're going to look at example 7. It'll be the last example that we look at.
Problem number 9. Okay, it says, a fever is generally considered to be a body temperature greater than 100 degrees Fahrenheit. As we all know from recently taking our temperature every single day. Your friend has a temperature of 37 degrees Celsius. Ta-da! Does your friend have a fever? So, they gave it to us in Celsius, and we want to know, okay, are they running fever or not? Do we need to make sure we have our mask on? Do they have COVID? So, what we need to do, we actually just in the previous example went ahead and rearranged the temperature formula for Fahrenheit. So we use the one that says Fahrenheit equals, because we want to know, okay, what is their temperature in Fahrenheit if it is 37 degrees in Celsius? Well, we just found out the formula was F equals 9/5 C, 9/5 times degrees Celsius, plus 32. That will tell us what it is in Fahrenheit. Let me set this paper down. So, the first thing we do is we're going to plug 37 in for C. So I have 9/5 times 37 plus 32. We multiply before we add, so I'm going to plug it into my handy dandy calculator. And that gives me 66.6, which is the same thing as 66 2/3, plus 32. So their temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Whew, we're safe. So I hope you got that. So now, I actually believe that's the last example we're going to work out. We're still going to look at the next example, but I'm not going to make you do another problem. Okay? The whole point of this is to rearrange formulas to solve for a different variable in them. Okay?
Okay, example 7, we are going to be using what's called simple interest. Okay, before we actually read the problem, I want to talk about this formula right here. This is something that would be given to you. This is an actual formula. I equals PRT. What that means, I stands for interest. Okay, the interest equals the P stands for principal amount, means the original amount. R is the rate. Okay, the interest rate, kind of the rate at which you get it. T is time in years, always in years. Okay, because most of the time, if you go, well, I know y'all don't, but your parents maybe, and when you become an adult, you may go to get a loan, whether it's for a house, some land, or just a business loan, personal loan. There's tons of types. But to calculate simple interest, this is kind of what you would use. And they always do them in years. You can never get a loan for like 5 months. So it always works they're based on years. So T always represents the time of the interest of the loan or whatever for a years. So it could be 1 year, it could be 20 years. It just depends. So now we'll go back and look at this problem. So it says you deposit $5,000 into an account that earns simple interest. So that means we're going to make money on this problem. It's not how much we would pay. After 6 months, the account earns $162.50 in interest. What is the annual interest rate? Okay, so I want to go back and kind of underline some stuff. You deposit $5,000. So if you're trying to figure out what piece that would be in this problem, okay, this is the interest rate. The interest, simple interest. This is the principal amount, the original amount, the rate, and the time in years. So you deposit $5,000, means you're putting that in, you start with that. That would be your P, your principal amount, okay? I'm gonna switch colors now. Then an account that earns simple interest, okay, that's our I. After 6 months, okay, that is a time. But remember I told you T is always in years. So they kind of talk about that over here. That's a very common area people make, is they would plug in 6. Well, it's 6 months. So in terms of a year, that's half a year, which is 0.5 or 1/2. So we have 0.5. Okay, the account earns, let me switch colors again, $162.50 in interest. That's our I, interest. They went ahead and gave us the interest. And so then the problem actually says, what is the annual interest rate? So we are trying to find R. Okay, we have I, we have P, and T. We are trying to find R. So let's rearrange this formula first, solving for R. Let me erase where I accidentally wrote over the R. Okay, so all of this is being multiplied, so we can divide both sides by PT to get rid of it. Okay, it cancels it, and all we're left with is R. So our rate will equal the interest divided by the principal times time. So then we take that and plug in our numbers. That's why it's helpful to rearrange these formulas. So our rate will equal the total interest that was made, $162.50, divided by the amount we put in, $5,000, times the amount of time we had it for, 6 months. So 0.5. So our rate would equal 0.065. And if you think about that, that doesn't make a lot of sense. Interest rates are always in percents. So if we go back and change that D to P, the alphabet, that goes from left to right. So you move your decimal 2 times to the right. It is 6.5%. That is the rate, 6.5%. Okay, we're not going to do an example on this one, or you're not going to work out a problem on this one. I just really wanted you to see that, because that formula is super beneficial because it relates to real life. So anyways, now you can, once you stop the video, I'll let you know what we're going to do in class.